The next article is Gender Equity in Education, the need to focus on early childhood education. In this article, the writer says that in March, the world commemorates the historic journey for women's rights, focusing on social victories such as universal slavery and women's greater contribution to economic activities. However, it is time to focus on gender-related issues in education, one of the most critical areas for development. An analysis in the Indian context reveals 4 fascinating facts. 1. A comparison focused exclusively on learning outcomes reveals gender equity. Data from one of the largest competency-based sample surveys in school education, the National Achievement Survey 2017, shows parity in learning levels between boys and girls in elementary and secondary classes across the country. For example, the average test scores in mathematics for girls and boys in classes 3 and 5 are exactly the same at 63 and 53 respectively. In class 10, scores are identical in both language and mathematics. 2. Although girls in India today are more educated than they have ever been, the gap in educational attainment has worsened over time. Over the past 2 decades, the mean years of schooling for girls has almost tripled from just 1.7 years in 1990 to 4.7 in 2018. Boys are also getting more education, with a doubling in the average educational attainment for males from 4.1 to 8.2 years. 3. The gender gap widens with progressive levels of education due to greater barriers to schooling that girls face due to social norms and deeply ingrained gender stereotypes correlated with biological factors such as adolescence. The dropout rate for boys in class 1 is marginally higher at 6.88, 6.38 for girls, but this trend radically reverses by class 8, when almost twice the number of girls are dropping out of the schooling system. 4. The roots of gender discrimination emerge at the earliest stages of education. More boys than girls tend to be enrolled in private institutions, where parents incur out-of-pocket expense. The preferred choice for girls' enrollment is the free government school, highlighting societal gender biases in exercising school choice. 5. Even at the age of 4, there exists a 5 percentage point gender difference in total enrollment. This difference is correlated with age and time and crosses 8 percentage points by the age of 8. Research shows that in cultures with a high level of gender inequality, the number of girls dropping out of school is significantly higher than in countries with low levels of gender inequality. Hello everyone, let's discuss today's The Hindu editorial page. The first article is The Larger Message to New Delhi from the Red Sea. In this article, the writer says that the Indo-Pacific has marked India's break from the unfriendly continental theatre, hemmed in by China and Pakistan and constrained by geopolitics on most remaining land borders. However, the ocean of opportunity is becoming another theatre of conflict, competition, and containment. The Houthi terror attacks on MV Kem Pluto and MV Sai Baba have forced India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar to rush to Tehran to persuade the principal Houthi sponsor to help cease the attacks. India's military response to the Red Sea situation has been swift, with the Indian Navy deploying guided missile destroyers in the broader region. The fragility of order and stability in the Indo-Pacific is a direct result of Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7. For India, the Houthi challenge may soon pass, given New Delhi's ties with Tehran. However, there is a larger question to consider. Does India have a maritime grand strategy that goes beyond occasional fishing, naval exercises with friendly nations, and a snail-paced increase of the budget allocation for the Indian Navy? India's maritime turn presents a major challenge, with elements of a different new two-front situation becoming increasingly apparent. India's new two-front challenge is not Pakistan and China posing a nutcracker situation for India, but a combination of its continental and maritime challenges. An aggressive and rising China, attempting to contain India on its continental and maritime fronts, is a classic two-front situation. While India has been allowing itself to be obsessed with the line of control with Pakistan in the west, defending the line of actual control with China in the north, and picking needless quarrels with its neighbors, Beijing was quietly building its empire of influence in the eastern, southern, and western oceanic planks. By the time New Delhi put its unresolved conflicts with Pakistan in cold storage and shifted gears to the China challenge on the LAC, the game had already gotten bigger. The People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, has been increasing its presence in the Indian Ocean region, IOR, at an alarming rate. The Chinese Navy, which is perhaps the largest in the world today, has an overall battle force of over 370 ships and submarines, including more than 140 major surface combatants. This number is expected to jump to 435 ships by 2030. By way of comparison, the Indian Navy today has 132 warships. China's push for overseas military bases, such as Beijing's military base in Djibouti, growing Chinese activities in Pakistan's Gwadar and Sri Lanka's Hambantota, should concern Indian strategists, even if they are not yet military bases. In Myanmar, the Kyokpyu port, which China is constructing, will enable PLAN to inch closer to the Indian Navy in the Bay of Bengal, a maritime space India heretofore enjoyed. Beijing is also exploring strategic investment options in the Seychelles and is also building a naval base in Ream, Cambodia. The small Indian Ocean island nation of Comoros is the latest to join China's fan club in the Indo-Pacific. India's assessment about China's strategy to contain India in the continental space in South Asia is not a misplaced one, but is defiantly an insufficient one. China is parallelly attempting to contain India in the larger maritime theater as well. Beijing's attempt is to influence those spaces and countries that India has historically engaged with, and it appears to be a zero-sum game. China's gain is India's loss. The next article is the truth about India's booming toy exports. In this article, the writer says that India's toy industry has experienced a significant turnaround in recent years, with exports increasing by 239% between 2014 to 15 and 2022 to 23, and imports declining by 52%. This success can be attributed to various promotional efforts under the Make in India regime, which was initiated since October 2014. The trade balance was negative in 2014 to 15, but turned positive from 2020 to 21 after a gap of 23 years. The turnaround in the labor-intensive industry is credible, as it occurred at a time when such industries are not doing too well. There could be two reasons for this success: protectionism, which could reduce demand for toys, and non-tariff barriers, NBTs, which can shrink supply, raise prices, and thus reduce demand. Alternatively, investment upswing could expand capacity and augment labor productivity to boost competitiveness and exports. Customs duty on toys increased from 20% to 60% in February 2020, and since January 2021, non-tariff barriers, NBTs, have been imposed, restricting imports. In 2020 to 21, imports fell and net exports turned positive. The COVID-19 pandemic times, with disrupted supply chains globally, adversely affected imports. As the global supply chain was restored in 2022 to 23, net exports were reduced to Rs1, 319 crore from Rs1, 614 crore in the previous year. The government further raised the basic customs duty to 70% in March 2023 to stem the renewed rise in imports. The turnaround in the toy trade during the last 3 years could be due to improving domestic productive capabilities. The Annual Survey of Industries, ASI data, for 2014 to 15 to 2019 to 20 showed that in 2015 to 16, the factory or organized sector accounted for 1% of the total number of factories and enterprises, employed 20% of workers, used 63% of fixed capital, and produced 77% of the value of output. In conclusion, the turnaround in India's toy industry can be attributed to improving domestic productive capacities and improving domestic production capabilities. However, the industry faces challenges in maintaining its competitiveness and attracting foreign investment. The next article is Limits and Borders Center must consult states before decisions that impinge on their powers. In this article, the writer says that the Border Security Force, BSF, in Punjab has been facing litigation due to the lack of effective consultation between the central and state governments. The union government has challenged the decision to increase the BSF's operational jurisdiction from 15 kilometers to 50 kilometers, which the border states view as a breach of federal principles and an encroachment into the law and order powers of the Punjab police. West Bengal and Rajasthan have also passed resolutions against the expansion. The Supreme Court's decision to examine the questions related to the expansion of the BSF's area of operations gains significance. In October 2021, the BSF issued a notification standardizing the area over which it would have jurisdiction to operate. The union government responded in December 2021 that the expansion would help it discharge its border patrol duty more effectively. The BSF primarily focuses on preventing transborder crimes, especially unauthorized attempts into or exit from Indian territory. It does not have the power to investigate or prosecute offenders, but must hand over arrested individuals and contraband to local police. In practice, BSF personnel work closely with the police, and there should be no clash of jurisdiction. The most relevant questions framed by the Supreme Court are whether the center's notification encroaches upon the state government's domain and what factors should be considered when determining the local limits of areas adjoining the borders of India.